Hi, everybody. Michelle Edmonds here from Idaho News 6. We are here with the Rebound Idaho. This is our way here at Idaho News 6 to help our great state of Idaho rebound from this pandemic as quickly as possible. And as you know, if you're joining us live on Facebook, or you have been every week, we bring in all kinds of experts in their field who are working diligently to try and help all of us rebound from the COVID-19 pandemic. And I'm really excited to introduce you today to one of your state leaders, somebody who you may not necessarily recognize, but who is doing so much work in transparency in Idaho. So welcome, Controller Brandon Wolf, to the Rebound Idaho. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much, Michelle. I appreciate the opportunity to be with you today.
Well, Controller, I have to get into, before we go into transparency in government during a pandemic, which is a massive topic that you have done a great job of trying to uncover for us. Let me take you back for just a moment and ask you, how were you doing in March when the coronavirus pandemic was really starting to hit Idaho and the federal government was in all kinds of negotiations, shall we say, over what kind of federal money could be coming Idaho's way? Right. Just give me a glimpse of what your life looked like and how it changed.
That's a great question, Michelle. I think one of the key things during that time of March was the legislative session was still wrapping up or getting towards the end. And of course, we have a major role from all the financial pieces there of working together with the budget and the legislative offices there. So that was a major piece as we're coming off of the legislative session. And then as the COVID is taking place, a major piece was watching and tracking what was taking place from the federal government on the CARES Act and seeing what was coming about. And so, our eyes were big to see those numbers that were being shared for the stimulus packages. And so those were some of the major things that were going through our team and our work here, was being able to identify how are we going to handle all this? What are we going to do? And trying to wrap our arms around that. But on this flip side, the real human side is, how do we help take care of our own staff? And first and foremost was the safety and protection of our staff and their families. And I share that frequently with our team, is that's first and foremost, the top priority is their health and safety. And so being able to help identify, one of the key things we also do, Michelle, is because we have some major IT functions here at the state, is we do exercises to test and make sure that we're up and running constantly. And so we were prepared with our staff, our team. We were able to do some tests. We said everyone has laptops, and we said everyone take your laptop home tonight. Everyone get on at 7 o'clock. Let's see how we handle all the bandwidth and traffic. And it worked well. And we said, all right, tomorrow, everyone, you're home. And we left a couple of staff here to run our data center and other key areas. But that was the first and foremost, our key was our own staff, let alone all the other financial pieces that were taking place.
It was so overwhelming for all of us. And I see you're wearing your mask down around, because now that you're back in the office, exactly our new reality that we live in. If you're just joining us on the Rebound Idaho, everybody, here on Facebook Live, we're talking with State Controller Brandon Wolf. We'd love to take your comments, your questions, your thoughts as we get into money, specifically, and transparency here in Idaho when it comes to the $1.2 billion that Idaho has now had access to from the federal government because of the pandemic. But before we go there, Controller, if people don't recognize you, or maybe they don't understand what your office does, can you give me in layman's terms your job role?
Definitely. A lot of people come up to me and say, what does the controller do? Are you controlling things? And, the state controller is the fiscal officer for the state of Idaho. And it was one of the original constitutional officers that was created back in the territory and moved forward when we became a state. And so I work alongside with the governor, the lieutenant governor, attorney general, treasurer, superintendent, secretary of state. And one of the key parts in the Idaho statute, it says, is my duty is to superintend the fiscal concerns of the state. And so with our team here at our office, our role is to help from the accounting, payroll, and those back-end office areas. And so again, they may not be the highlight, of state government, the policy settings that take place that way, but they're just as critical and important. And a lot of times you sit there, and if you look at your own financial in the family, you want to make sure you have a good, strong accountant that takes care of that. So someone that's calm, collected, and understands and wants to make sure that your money is being handled in the right and proper way. So the controller works closely with all the agencies. We are behind the scenes, but if we're doing our job right, then usually people don't know about us, and that's a good thing.
I was going to say, I'm not sure that when I've gone into schools, kids raise their hand, say, I'm going to be the state controller. No
Exactly.
offense to you.
Right. I'll take that.
So,
One of the,
oh, go ahead.
yeah,
I'm sorry.
other than my mom even said, does anyone even know what the controller does? And I said, well, Mom, maybe that's my part to help make sure people do understand what that role is.
Well, which is one reason we wanted to have you on the Rebound Idaho today, because I don't think people understand. And again, we'd love to hear comments or questions that you might have out in Facebook land, but what the role has been since the pandemic hit. So I know you developed some slides, and I want to see some of these slides about Transparent Idaho. So first, talk about the history of Transparent Idaho, because this isn't something that just happened once COVID-19 hit.
Definitely. Thank you. One of the key things, I've been here at the office for a little over almost 24 years now. And one of the key things that I was looking at when I became controller, I saw a graph, and it was important for me, but I was truly sitting there say the trust in government. And if we go to the next slide there, one of the key parts is it talks about the why. And we listed out several things, and these are the whys behind the transparency and why we came about it. Back in 2013, when we went live with the first Transparent Idaho website, it did a great job. It shared all the data, the information. But over the years, we're like, there's more technology and opportunity to share and have more data, share it easily with the citizens. And so there was a product that we worked with our team here, and we rolled out a new version last summer. And with that, again, it's incredible what's out there. There's over 80 million rows of transactions. And so from that's kind of the genesis or the background of where transparency came from. And I tie it back to the one main thing is the first icon there in the upper left is the restoration or the confidence in public trust. If we were to do a poll, and when I go in and talk to kids in the schools, I'll ask them, and I say, well, do you trust your federal government? And there may be one or two hands that go up. And then I'll say, well, do you trust your state government? And quite a few more. And then I said, do you trust your local government? And it's interesting, depending on where we're at, if something's gone on. But it's interesting, it comes back to where we have local control, people trust them because they know the individuals. So that's a key part. Another part where we felt the history of why we came up with Transparent Idaho was truly to change the culture, helping state agencies, helping the citizens know that if the public information is available and it's public, then they have the right to know, and making that available, rather than having to sit there and say, hey, put in a FOIA or a public information request, and can I get this? And the agency will, hold on to it tightly. This provides that opportunity to change that culture and let the citizens be able to ask and get that information. And of course, being able to deter fraud, and in this case, what we'll talk later on here is being able to help put that out there. For example, I share this story, and I'll bring up my mom again, but when I was younger, and I still love my cookies, I love a good chocolate chip or a sugar cookie. And when I grew up down in Preston, Idaho, I grew up and as I was doing that, my mom always loved to make the cookies, and she had that cookie jar there in the kitchen. And if I tried to reach into that cookie jar, she could always hear it no matter what. Now, she's part wolf, since she's Mama Wolf, and she could hear me open that cookie jar. But that analogy, though, now you apply that here to a website with this data. If mom's watching, you may be a little more apprehensive to go ahead and make that purchase or to spend that money or to any type of fraud. So again, that's a great opportunity to help deter that. And on the flip side, you would say, well, it helps increase accountability, where state agencies are more accountable. They know that they're being held to it, that the citizens are watching to see how much they may spend on a certain expense item. Those are the key parts. And then the last piece there, for all those, whatever level of government they may be, some of their key parts is always making those policy decisions. And when it gets to that, it's how do I make that policy decision? lot of times they need that data and they need that information to feel confident in making that choice. And so if they have that confidence in knowing that that data is there, that it's the right data and everything like that, it can help them make better and quicker decisions, and it's better for all of us. And at the end of the day, all of these things tie together. It's for good government, and that's what we need and what we want.
And what we care about as taxpayers, right? Because everything you're saying here is controlled by money that each of us is hardworking every day and then giving a portion over to our governments, and we expect them to use it wisely.
Exactly. You know, that's a key part, is being able to have that and having that confidence. And that next slide, if I may go over 2 slides here, one more, I'm going to skip ahead. One more. This is a slide that I love to show, and it says the trust in government is at an all-time low. And you know what, if I kind of walk through the chart here, starting in 1958, the public's trust in federal government was at around, what, 73%. And as you move along the chart there, you can see a spike in 2001. Well, we know that spike was 9/11. And we can all relate back to that time when, you know, united we stand, and you couldn't find a flag anywhere because everyone was purchasing them and they were going out. And we were, as a nation, we were really close and strong. And then as you can see that chart there, as it tails back off, the last time the Pew Research provided this, it said in April of 2019, it was at 17%. And you sit there and say, wow, if you're to build your trust back in government, your key areas, you need to start with the financial area. And so this chart right here is what really has driven me from the very beginning of creating Transparent Idaho, is this. And it drives me every day today to help instill and let the citizens know how we can build that trust back up. Knowing that it's down this low, how can we increase it? And part of that to me is, and to our team, is how do we even track that too? Are we increasing the trust in government here in Idaho by doing this? And those are some opportunities we have as we move forward as well.
So is that where the idea came from, to track the money coming from the federal government for the pandemic?
It definitely did. You know, we have our existing site that's been up for a little over a year now, and we had the 80 million rows of financial and personnel data that was public. And, you know, when this first hit, Governor Little came to me and he said, hey, Brandon, is there an opportunity we can track all of this CARES and COVID money on your Transparent Idaho website? And I said, yes, Governor, it's the perfect spot where we can do that. And I'd love to do that. And, you know, we've had, you know, many kudos from across the country as I talk to my peers in the other states. And so that's been a huge plus, being able to share that. And that was the genesis on this side as well, to help track and start. There's, when you look at $1.25 billion, sometimes it just makes your eyes wonder if that's a lot of money. And so being able to help track every single dime, we thought this was the perfect opportunity.
It is impressive too, because I would say that the site that you have developed on Transparent Idaho is pretty user friendly as well. And I think people will enjoy it when they get on there and see what our government is doing to make sure that all the money is being spent effectively. And there are really 2 parts to it, correct? There's the side for the small business grants that we heard so much about, those grants going out from the state with federal money attached to them. About $10,000 was the limit for those grants, and tracking what small businesses actually got those grants. And then the second part of it is the community relief funds, CRF funds, as you've heard us talk about, for local, state, tribes. So these are your government entities that were now getting money from the federal government as well. And tracking all of that seems impossible to someone on the outside. So how do you even go about starting this platform? It was already started, obviously, but how do you make sure you're getting the accurate information on here?
Well, that's a great question. You know, one of the things is it's a collaborative effort, and I love to share the Idaho way. And sometimes that may be overused, but I truly feel that's the way it was done here. It's a joint effort from many state agencies, working with the Tax Commission. It was working with the governor's Coronavirus Financial Advisory Committee, who actually coordinated this, the governor and some small business leaders that are on that committee that helped have the idea and said, here's an opportunity. And the US Treasury actually gave some guidance that allowed that opportunity to take place. And then it's a lot of great state employees that worked very diligently to coordinate that through the tax commission, then back through the controller's office, that we could make those payments to those businesses and individuals. And again, being able to have that all the way through. And then again, from the very beginning, the governor said, hey, I'd love to be able to track every single dime. And so we worked very closely with all those teams, and then we're able to have and post all that information on a nightly basis and post onto Transparent Idaho.
Do you ever get any pushback, controller, from people saying, what about privacy?
We haven't necessarily from this standpoint, and we've all the data that we have is public information. There's other information that we've posted on our Transparent Idaho website, but we've spent a great deal of time to truly make sure that that's public information. We wouldn't otherwise. I'm just as critical and watching over and making sure that we protect that's private and confidential. But on the flip side, it's changing that culture to say, if it's public, then let's put it out there.
What's been fascinating to you as your team has been creating this? What element of this did you say to yourself, wow, that's really good, or that's unique, I haven't seen that, or we needed that in order to make this work?
Well, I go back to, maybe it's our Idaho way again. It's just our team rolling up their sleeves, getting the work done, no matter what the hours and what the time. And again, all of this is taking place during COVID. So some of our employees were teleworking from their homes or cabins or wherever. It's the coordination and effort, but it was always that can do. Let's get it done and let's do it and show that we can do it. I think one of the interesting things is always seeing the data itself, being able to help track that and see. I love to see the data. I'm always after my team, and they know that from being able to say, hey, where does this show or what is that? And being able to look like on those small business grant side is being able to track, where is the money flowing? Is it going to Ada County? Is it proportionally to all the other counties based on the number of businesses? It may be interesting to say, well, is this county up in North Idaho that has a small population, are they getting the same amount of funds proportionally to their population? So those have been fun to watch and to track and to see. They're very interesting. And of course, to see how many employees they may have, what are their expenses, all of that can be tracked on this website. So what you're seeing here on the screen is you're actually seeing a live, and one of the key parts, Michelle, that I want to share with you is this gives some narrative to it. It's not just a data dump and here's all the data. We wanted the citizens, we wanted to make it easy for them to digest it and to consume it. So as you see, like here on the screen, there's been $55,442,000 as of last night that's gone out to small business grants. And it's showing that, and then you can actually click on that and go inside, and it's all, again, having that paragraph to the side, you can click and see and scroll in there and go into that a lot deeper and further there. So you have the chart, and then all the data, all 6,500 businesses that have received it is listed there below. And you can see the cities, counties, what the grant was for. So it's very powerful to be able to see that, see it visually. And then over time, some of the information there on the left is you can change the same data, change the chart. You can look at it by a different view over there on the left side and say, I want to view it by, so for example, the business grants by total distribution or by county. So those are some of the things that you can actually click on. And again, you're looking through lots of data and how quickly you can jump around to see how it's distributed in a different way.
When we're talking about these small business grants, and you were showing it right there, the money that came up on the screen, it shows the amount that they're given up to $10,000, correct?
Correct. Yeah, so what they've applied, and some of these businesses may have received PPP or other types of federal support during this time frame. And as they coordinated through the Idaho State Tax Commission, they were able to determine, okay, maybe they had received $5,000 in the PPP And so they were allowed to get $5,000 of this small business grant. So that's why you may see different dollar amounts that don't equal a nice round 10,000. And then the governor's coronavirus financial advisory committee, they also, over time, as they were looking at this, they're like, well, they opened up the filter of who could receive this a little bit more and said, well, we need to include those that are self-employed. And so over the last several weeks, you can see a growth in the number of self-employed individuals throughout the state and how that's grown. And so theirs was limited to $7,500.
Does it show on here, Controller Wolf, how the businesses spent the money, or is it just showing the allocation of the amount of dollars coming through the state?
Michelle, it's just the allocation. So it's sharing there on the grant purpose, say like the one that's highlighted, that was for equipment. And we don't know anything further than that, other than that was a grant given to that individual or that business.
And we should mention too that you didn't decide who gets the money and how much money they got.
In this case, no, this is coordinated through the state tax commission that then sent us the file. Just as we process all the tax refunds, they send us a nightly file and we coordinate and work closely with them to process this.
Was there more here, Controller Wolf, that you wanted to show us?
Well, let me, as you brought up and mentioned, there was the whole small business grant side. If I click back and go back to the homepage there of that, and maybe go back one more. What we had, as you brought up and mentioned, that was all the small business grant side. There's also the local, state, and tribal community support. And just breaking that up, the CFAC, or the Coronavirus Financial Advisory Committee, also allocated, and by allocated meaning they set aside a certain amount or a cap of money that state agencies, cities, counties, and local districts and tribes would have available for reimbursement. So what we're seeing here on the screen is, to date, there's been $536 million that's been allocated or set aside for all of these different local or state agencies. And if you wanted to, you could click in there for time purposes, but you can dive in and look at each city, county, taxing district in the state and see how much they were allocated. Again, that doesn't mean how much they've spent right now. That just means what they've been allocated to be able to receive as a reimbursement. So on the screen here, this is showing, again, from the tiniest little city of Warm River received an allocation of $100. And if you scrolled all the way to the bottom there and scrolled on that next one, it's going to go all the way to the bottom, and it has the city of Boise with 7 million. Well, it has the tribes, but again, broken by the various state agencies. And again, what this is all this is the allocation portion. The other piece, though, Michelle, that I want to share with you, though, so that's on the one side, but the screen or that graph right below where it says CRF expenditures, and this is really the meat of what we're getting to. This shows, as of last night, and we're at the beginning stages here, is $592,000 have been spent and been reimbursed now using that CRF money. So if we go ahead and we click on go into there, what this is showing a tree map, and it's broken down. In this case, it was broken down by subcategories. But if we clicked on, let's say, the PPE down in the lower right there, one right there, this is actually showing all the PPE monies that have been reimbursed to date so far. So it's showing the city of Kellogg, and it's given a breakdown. As if you scroll to the right there, you can see the rubber gloves for protection and who the vendor and how much money and the date that happened. Very, very powerful. What this is showing and what the true purpose of all this, Michelle, is this is allowing the citizens of Idaho to see where every single dime for all this COVID-19 money is being spent and how it's being reimbursed. The fun part here, though, where we have this categorized, in the future, you'll be able to track and say, well, how much has the city of Kellogg spent compared to the city of Fruitland? Did they get the same amount, and did they have to pay the same amount for masks, for sanitizer? So those are going to be the important things going forward that allow the citizens to truly track and to see that.
Why is transparency so important to you?
Well, the biggest piece, and I'll go back to, is it's trying to build that confidence in government. That's the biggest piece. It's back to that chart of how can we increase that and build confidence again. And if we can do our part, then that's the best of all. And then we can help create that momentum, create the momentum. And it's not happening just here at the state controller's office, but it's happening in all state government. It's happening in all the cities and counties. And that kind of leads into the future, where we can go from here. And, one of the key parts is we have all this data and information for state agencies that was on our original transparent site. But where I would like to go in that vision, those next steps is I would love to have all the city, county, and school district data. And I know education's key to you, Michelle. How powerful would it be to say, well, how much has this school district spent on busing? How much have they spent on food and meals? Be able to quickly track and compare that from school district to school district. And that's wherein the power leads, that we can have better decisions and better policy making.
Well, you've turned this one around pretty fast. So when does the next one get debuted?
Well, part of this is, as I shared, there's only been 592,000 on the reimbursement of that 1.25 billion. As that starts to flow through, we'll be able to see more and more, and we'll have more reports, more analytics, more statistics. And part of that is, I break it into 3 areas. One is to inform, second is to educate, and the third is to engage. If we just give a data dump and say, here's all this, and it'll overwhelm someone when we just inform them like that. But if we can go the next step, in which I appreciate you sharing today, is helping educate our viewers, our citizens. But if we take it to that third and that highest level to truly engage